Okay, recording, cool. And then I'll share my screen. So the intent of this conversation is that, Devin, it's my understanding that you are part of the infrastructure team that is kind of, I guess, you're maybe personally in charge of the project to have other non-GitLab.com properties utilize more auto DevOps and other functionality. And so I am particularly interested, in this team is a group of folks from the monitor stage, am interested in how you're doing that, if we can help you figure out other parts of the tool that you, of the product that you aren't using for the monitoring of the various properties. And maybe also I'd love to get a sense of your kind of roadmap for which properties are going to be brought into this process and how you manage them. So maybe it would be good to start with like an intro of that effort on your part and kind of what your goals of it are.
Yeah, so the way we're thinking about it is we've got kind of our core GitLab.com site, and then we've got non-core properties. And the non-core stuff is mostly support tools, things that that are part of the whole offering, but not actually part of GitLab, the product. So it's things like the licensing tool, the customers tool. We've got the version tool, which collects all of the phone home information from all of our self-managed instances. We've also got things like the forum, you know, the user forum, and the design tools, the pajamas. So those things are non-core. They're not really part of the GitLab product, but we still run them as production instances. And so those are primed for deploying with auto DevOps rather than trying to do it the system administrator way that we've been doing it in the past. So what I'm trying to do is set up all of the infrastructure parts, the Terraform, the infrastructure as code, to run these, the Kubernetes clusters that this all attaches to as production, production type of setup, but not as part of our GitLab.com tool set. Because right now it's kind of cluttering our existing repos. We've got a lot of stuff in there that is really a one-off thing that we don't spin up all of those tools when we spin up a staging instance or a test instance. So we're trying to separate all of that. So we've got all of the tooling that we use to run like a GitLab.com instance and all of the peripheral extra stuff. So we're standing up those as Kubernetes clusters with whatever they need to do the auto DevOps thing. We've got some Cloud SQL stuff that we're putting in there for persistent databases, stuff like that. The plan is to use as much of the internal tooling as we can, even though we understand that at the moment it's probably not sufficient for our needs as far as monitoring, alerting, redundancy, all of the things that we need for production. But if we stand it up and start finding those issues, then we can go back to the product teams and say, look, we really need this fixed. And presumably everything that we need is going to be stuff that our customers will also need.
Perfect. Awesome. That was super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I would love to just, maybe from there you can tell us where you are in that process with the first one, which I believe is design. Is it you have the clusters, you're deploying to it, you're not using the monitoring tools, or you haven't really even started with the clusters and deploying to it?
So for the design, which is the first attempt, we picked design kind of arbitrarily because it doesn't have a database attached, which makes it easy to get it up and running. The harder part of the other ones is going to be figuring out how we're going to do the database and load the data and stuff like that. So design was fairly easy. We set up the clusters. We've got 2 clusters. We've got one for production and one for the staging and review apps. That staging one is kind of shared. We could split it into 3, but we didn't really see any need to at the moment. And pretty much what I've done as far as the monitoring part is just switch on everything I could see that by default would give monitoring. That's probably not what we ultimately want, but my focus was really on getting it up and running so that the DevOps pipelines would succeed and they could deploy it by merging. And that was kind of the goal for this round one. We're going to have to be a little bit more complete with some of the other stuff, because with the design, it doesn't matter so much if it goes down for a few minutes, whereas if it goes down with some of the other stuff, it's going to be a little more impactful. So I would like to come up with a plan for monitoring. I just haven't really thought about it yet. We just got to the point where they can merge without having to talk to the infrastructure team and have it actually deploy to production.
Cool. Yeah, that's an awesome first step, by the way. And I love the just planned process for that. I guess one of the things that we had in the discussion in this issue was, like, can we help you gain familiarity with the monitoring tools and also what's kind of coming in the roadmap? I would also love to see it might also help to give you, I guess, scoping for what we're attempting to do, so that when you encounter like, hey, I can't get it to do this, you would know to create an issue versus being like, that's not anywhere near where we were kind of headed. Would that be helpful?
It would, yeah. I mean, really, I haven't thought about monitoring at all. I've been concentrating all my efforts on getting this stuff running. And my next step is getting the databases running so we can start putting some of these other apps in there. I'm also on call this week, so I'm pretty much putting the whole effort on hold until early next week. But if there's some easy way to digest it, if there's some like screencast or anything that you guys have that wouldn't require sitting down and reading pages and pages of documentation.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amelia, Seth, Jose, I don't know of any like, here's a review of the monitor stage features. We have those in some other stages, but not in monitor. Anybody know of any place that we could point Devin?
We had one with Josh, but it's pretty old. I don't think it covers the new features. We should do a new one.
Okay. So what I thought, Devin, is I could just briefly show you in the settings for design. I got myself admin permissions here, and I could show you kind of what monitoring you have today. And like, this is all out of the box because you installed Nginx, then you get these 3 sets of data. I don't think there are any default alerts configured for any of them, but you could easily define a query and an alert threshold. This looks like it spans the various environments. There's also system metrics that's like the cluster metrics. And again, you could define alerts on these. And if you were to like have some standard alerts, then you could set it up in this operations tab so that those alerts don't just send you an email, but that they create an issue for you. Actually, it looks like that's already been set here, but there's no template, so these will just create dummy ones. But you could also set it up so that it is creating issues for you based on a template. That is the thing that I'm like, as a product organization, we're most interested in getting feedback from Dogfooding of that entire loop. Like, I created an auto DevOps project, I set up some alerts, and then I am having it create incidents for me. And are those incidents, can I configure those incidents sufficiently so that I could actually triage and resolve that incident? And we don't have anyone, frankly, using that in any sort of production way today. So that is the thing that is most interesting to me. I don't know if that's interesting to you, if that like breaks how your process works today.
It could be. There's a couple questions that pop up right away. Is how do we get that to go to something like PagerDuty? Is it just doing that, or can we set up integrations like a Slack integration where it goes into Slack, or whether it, if it goes to PagerDuty and calls one of their webhooks, then we can get it into our workflow.
Those would be great issues for us to add. Seth, I don't know, like, I think.
Yeah, we do have a Slack MVC one that would hook up like incident creation with posting something in Slack and then being able to use like chat ops to interact with that. We don't really have any PagerDuty integration right now, but that is something we want to do. I don't think we don't really have it designed out. Like I'm not sure where those connections would be. But you know, that is it definitely feels like something that we would need to do to make this very useful.
I don't know if you'd want to make it just PagerDuty. It would probably be more useful to have a generic webhook that you could put whatever it is that you want to do, you know, whether it's PagerDuty or some other tool. Most of them allow webhooks.
So tell me, when you're talking about hooking it up with PagerDuty, what is the workflow that you are envisioning?
So right now, we use Alert Manager to alert when certain conditions exceed certain thresholds, and that sends an alert to PagerDuty. PagerDuty then has its escalation path, and you know, it first sends a push message to the on-duty person's phone. If they don't answer, then it'll text them, then it'll call them, then it'll escalate up to the next person. So I don't know if we want to try and replicate any of that functionality. It's pretty involved, and it's easy enough just to call a webhook. The webhook would also let us post to Slack, just using the webhook functionality. The other thing is that it looks like from this screen that the issue is only opened in the project.
That's correct, yeah.
And we don't monitor that project. So if we do get an alert on this, nobody on the Infra team is going to see it. So if this could open a issue in the infrastructure queue, that would be a whole different story. Because then we could set up a template that has all the right labels and tags, and the right people would see it when it happened.
Cool. So, and I'm split screening, also trying to write stuff like that down. Those are all great issues that we can create. Let me make sure I'm capturing this somewhere. So the other thing, so Seth probed about what interaction you would want. If there was the ability to like check in your alert manager config and have that deployed, is that a shortcut around using this UI based configuration?
Yeah, that might work. Yeah, because if we could just say, just use this whole alert manager, then we'd have all the queries and everything. Yeah, that could be a shortcut.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for you to just be using generic auto DevOps, but I understand that is not sophisticated enough at this point. But if we could have some way so that auto DevOps saw your alert manager config and deployed it to the Prometheus cluster, that is an issue that I think we have in the upcoming roadmap. And then you had suggested creating incidents in other projects.
Yeah.
Rather than the self one.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Are there, like you mentioned, you have your own set of metrics. The other thing that we would love feedback on is, are these the right metrics? Are there other metrics that you would want to immediately have in these dashboards that you consider more critical, especially for a project without a database like design? I mean, these are what rolled out of the box, but are there other ones that you would have rather seen? You don't have to answer that now, but those are also the kinds of questions we can make sure we're instrumenting as part of the default setup, that you get different views or different metrics.
Have you guys looked at our standard dashboards?
Not for pajamas, or for design.
don't know that we have specifically for that, but usually I saw the 500 5xx errors. Those are the main ones that we use for non-database stuff. Let me just give you our triage dashboard link to see what.
So the other thing that you can do as part of our product is, if I go to this operations settings, I can add your dashboard to this external dashboard link.
Oh, I did not know that we could do that.
What did I do that gave me a...
That needs to be configured instance-wide. I don't think you want to do that on GitLab.com.
This is instance-wide configuration? It's just scoped to the project, I thought.
Yeah, but the external dashboard, well, external URLs need to be configured instance-wide. It's good. It's good for development purposes, but not for production.
Gotcha. Okay, so that might be another one. And then, do you primarily let me just pull up that link, and then you can maybe walk me through these dashboards that I'll be illuminating for us. So these aren't going to be the Kubernetes cluster health.
That's not in there, but it should just give you an idea of what we look at on the GitLab.com site.
Okay, but you don't have something similar. Does that mean there's no general monitoring for design today? Or
Not like this.
There wasn't before moving it. Okay.
Yeah, not like this. Yeah, this is pretty detailed. And a lot of this isn't really going to be relevant because we've got things like Redis and the Gitly nodes and stuff like that, file space. But you can see by the way we have it laid out what's important, and so the errors coming from the back ends, then the HA proxy would be kind of the equivalent of the ingress responses.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it would be interesting to see. I don't know if it would be interesting to see if you wrote your own alert manager config for design .gitlab.com. If we could then look at that and be like, oh, here's all the places where those metrics are missing and we should have included them. Or the types of alerts and where you're sending the alerts, we could use that to target UI improvements. How do you personally feel about configuring alarm thresholds in UI versus in a file like an alert manager?
Well, I like it if it works. The thresholds, it can't be just like little radio boxes or whatever, because a lot of the things that we're configuring are using Prometheus queries, and some of those are fairly involved. So just having a threshold is not as useful as being able to actually write the query, but it's writing the queries requires the user to know how to write those and know what all the fields are and a lot of documentation. Stuff like this is useful for just a quick and dirty dashboard. But when we get into like a little more heavy monitoring, like what we're going to be doing on GitLab.com, we're going to have to be able to write custom queries. So it might be nice to have something like that for people to just get something up and running quick, but then also have the option of adding your own.
Yeah.
Maybe like a custom option or.
Yeah, we have the ability to add custom metrics and alerts on those custom metrics, I think, if not today, soon. But I do think there's like the Datadog way of where you can really cool, like pull up a metric and then draw where you want the threshold to be, both in terms of X and like width and height of where that threshold sits. I don't know if you're familiar with that view in Datadog. But there is kind of a question of how much investments do we do in that versus allowing you to define it in a common alert manager config and then deploying that more easily. It does
Have
feel
you guys
like
talked to Andrew about any of this?
I have, yes, significantly. I don't know if others on the team have.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, because he's working on some newer stuff that we're going to be using on GitLab.com eventually that is a little more predictive and uses algorithms to really tell if there is a problem based on the historical data. It would be really cool to have some of that stuff in here, but I know he's not ready enough with it for us to even use it on GitLab.com yet.
Is that the stuff he was talking about at Monitorama, the seasonality and?
Yeah. Well, he's also been defining SLO. So there's this interesting collision because parts of the monitor team, one group of it, APM group, also is in charge of GitLab self-monitor, and we're moving some of the monitoring for how we give the tooling we give our customers to monitor their own GitLab instance, and which is very analogous with the monitors that Andrew and others have for GitLab.com, to use these features, right? So that when a user is monitoring their GitLab instance, they have a GitLab instance self-monitoring project that has dashboards created with some of those metrics. So that is kind of underway, but that feels like much longer term, whereas you working on some of these smaller non-core ones feels like we can at least get to where you're actually doing incident management in that full life cycle with it sooner rather than later. And that, as I said before, that's like my primary interest, is to have a real world internal dog fooder of that complete loop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I may,
Go ahead.
Can I go back to the PagerDuty thing? Because I'm wondering, what would it take for you to not use PagerDuty? Is it, especially for a smaller project like this?
So PagerDuty gives us escalations, and that's the hardest thing to do, is schedules and escalations. So we have a rotation, or we have two rotations. We have the rotation for Europe and the rotation for not Europe, I guess. And every 5 weeks, we have a different person, or it's a 5-week cycle. So we have, I go on call every 5 weeks for the North American APAC rotation. And getting that kind of scheduling into the product would be, it would be very cool, but I think it would also be a lot of effort. And, because PagerDuty gives us things like overrides. So you set a schedule that's like what your plan is. And then somebody says, well, I've got this thing. I need to go to a conference that week. Can I trade with somebody? And so you go in and put in overrides and switch places. And all of that stuff is pretty heavy, and PagerDuty is very specialized in that.
Yeah. So you're going to hate me, but just bear with me as I describe this. What if you had issue templates, like one for each individual, and you just flipped that drop down on the integration? Where is it? Right here. That said which template you're using for a given week. So you're like, well, this is who's on call, so I chose their template, and that template is, obviously part of that template, you can have quick actions that assigns it or pings or @mentions somebody when the issue is created. You could also have like a little bot that runs around that says, oh, this has been created and Devin was assigned to it, and there hasn't been a response in 5 minutes, so it escalates to their manager, just like we have internal triage bots for doing stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out ways that we could get you using this so you start putting feedback into it for something like design without.
Yeah. That could work. I mean, there's the manual step, but you can kind of envision it. We're not going to be able to do anything like service level agreement type of stuff with it because it doesn't actually page somebody's phone. It just does an at mention and
an email, but the most you could do is any notification from.
Yeah.
Unless I don't know what our notification settings are, but I'm wondering if you could manipulate because it would be in this project and you would get mentioned on it, you could have separate notification settings for this project. But yeah, you're right. At most, it would still send you an email.
I mean, the easiest way to integrate is to just have it do a webhook. When an alert gets triggered, just run a webhook, and we can put in the PagerDuty webhook for that. That would be the quickest way to get it into our workflow.
Yeah, what I'm trying to simulate is a customer who doesn't have PagerDuty today and wants to do something similar. It's hard because you guys, obviously, the whole team is integrated with PagerDuty because this is just one minor property. But I was trying to think of a way that we could get by without doing it.
Well, if we're not concerned about actual emergency downtime incident kind of stuff, having it be able to file this issue in the infrastructure queue with an on-call label, the on-call person will see that because we do monitor that queue with that label. So that would be easy.
So that would be prioritizing having it send to a separate project within the group.
Yeah,
is that in the org.org group?
No, I think it's gitlab.com/glinfra/infrastructure.
Okay, so it would need to be instance-wide incident redirect.
Yeah, because that would put it right in our workflow with nobody needing to adjust or know anything.
Okay. We can prioritize that one.
Yeah, that seems like the easiest way.
Cool, we are almost out of time. Amelia, Jose, Seth, any other questions for Devin? Seth, you just said you have to drop off. Thank you. Anybody else?
I just kind of wanted to listen to see where this process was at because I'm looking forward to getting feedback. So it was a great introduction to what's going on. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad we can start integrating this stuff because a couple of weeks ago we wouldn't have been able to, and I hadn't really thought about monitoring other than I had a conversation with my manager saying, are we going to set up monitoring for this? And he was sharing my opinion that we should not, and we should use what's in the product, even though it's insufficient at the moment, because that'll help us push, getting this stuff prioritized.
Yeah, and I should have started with this, but I consider this a high priority. The monitor tools are great, but we're going to be able to move so much faster if we have some internal team dogfooding and pointing us to it. I would appreciate, Devin, if you made a little bookmark in your toolbar that said create a new CE issue, and just anytime you found anything, you just threw an issue and pinged me on it. That is going to be the best way, and you'll find that we're going to be very responsive to those.
Okay, and can you just send me a quick note with all the things that you want in that, like the tag, who you want me to ping?
Sure.
It's just you or more people.
Yeah.
What label to use and where exactly to open it if there's a specific template you want me to use.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll give you I have a little quick link in my menu bar, and I'll tell you the exact labels to throw on and to ping myself and Sarah as the other product manager. So.
Great, yeah, because I've been doing the same thing with the configure team, and they're not consistent about what labels they tell me to use.
Okay, I'll just give you one, and if you ping us, we can add the rest of the labels.
Perfect. Yeah,
cool.
I like how this is going to shape up, and this is a good time to do it because I haven't even started thinking about it yet. So knowing what your vision is, when I do start doing it, it'll be easier. So as far as the integration, did what I did on the design project, is that sufficient? Do I just add the Prometheus pods to the integration and it should be good, or is there more
Yeah.
stuff that I need to do to configure it?
No, I mean, by installing Prometheus on the cluster, it should auto-populate those dashboards. It doesn't set up any alerts, but it will if you did set up an alert, also create an incident in that project. So that all happens by default. But the next step would be adding alerts and creating incident templates you would want to use.
Okay, so once you guys finish with the instance-wide issue opening, then I would just go in, add the Prometheus pod, and go in and set up whatever alerts to send to our infrastructure queue, and that should be it.
Yeah, I mean, you already have the Prometheus pod, at least in
that one.
System, right? But the other ones, yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah, it was being a little finicky in one of the other ones that I was working on. But it seems like hitting the upgrade button fixed it.
Okay. Yeah, and not just features, also bugs. That's another big point of this, is that you probably encounter some bugs. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Devin. It's great to chat.
Yeah, thanks for the meeting, and I'm glad we're on the same page now.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.